Hello everyone, I am Shivam Banka and I'll be going through this case study interview. The purpose of this video is to give you an explanation of what is expected of you in a case study interview and how it progresses. This video is divided into two parts. In the first part, I'll be explaining this case, going through it line by line and present my understanding of it. And the second part, I'll present the analysis of the case as a whole. For context, all the text which you see which has a blue background is the conversation of the interviewer, and all the text which you see which has a white background and blue text are the statements of the candidate. Let's begin. We are doing a case study which is in the banking sector. It goes like this. Your client is a leading public sector bank in India. Recently, it has been experiencing a decline in profitability. It wants you to analyze why. Uh, the first statement in a case study interview is usually the most important one. It gives you a scope of where exactly you have to look into. And this we know it's a leading public sector bank and it is experiencing decline profitability recently. And we have to figure out why there is a decline and probably recommend some suggestions or solutions if that's how what is expected in such a scenario. Is our objective to reverse the decline in profitability, or is the bank only looking towards assessing the reasons of the decline? The bank wants us to analyze the reason and suggest avenues of growth. Okay? Is it safe to assume that the bank is national pan-India and that domestic business is a major arm of the business? That is a fair observation. Okay. Yeah, so we are a typical case study interview is divided into three parts. Uh, Especially profitability. In the first part, you have to figure out uh, more about the business or what exactly is the situation, competition, or the core business of the company. Then in the second part, you have to structure the interview and figure out where exactly is the problem coming from. And in the third part, you provide recommendation and solutions. So we are in the first part, we are trying to understand the business more. Yeah, is it safe to assume the bank is a national pan India, and that domestic business is a major arm of the business. That's a fair observation. I'm trying to understand the bank's customer base. Am I right in assuming that the bank draws a majority of its business from rural banking and also a competitive position in the urban areas? Okay, that's a very out of the box assumption, but it's a good thing that it's framed in a way that it's asking the interviewer rather than assuming it. Yes, a majority of the bank's business is from rural areas, and in urban areas, it has a more muted presence, something it aims to work on. Since when the bank, since when, since when has the bank been facing a decline in profitability? Also, have the other banks been facing similar issues? The bank has been witnessing falling profitability from the past 5 to 6 quarters. Some banks have seen declining profit, but others have seen profit periods of steady growth. So yeah, so it's not the industry-wide problem. The bank has been seeing decline from 5 to 6 quarters. That means 1.5 years. Uh, and other banks have seen steady growth. So it's not an industry-wide problem. Interesting. That's a decline for almost a year and a half. While the industry seems to be doing fine, this leads me to hypothesize that in some systematic issue with that is some systematic issue with the bank that probably stems from faulty loan policies, uh, in which escalating cost a final clarification. What is the timeline that we are looking at to reverse the decline in profitability? I think it's a very extreme assumption that faulty loan policy is where the problem is coming from, and came out of nowhere, uh, which is not a very good way to approach it. But yeah, I think the last question is pretty relevant. At what timeline are we looking to reverse the profitability and how much time we want to get back on track? The bank wants to reverse the trend in the next 1 and 2 years. Given the short timeline, I would like to take two prolonged approach to increase profitability. And profitability, we have two possibilities: increase revenue, increase the customer base and income from that advances. Uh, okay. Second, we could look at the cost aspect, maybe target recoveries to decrease the NPAs, reducing the return of assets. Is there something specific you want me to look at? Has there been a substantial decrease in the revenues or an increase in cost? So the candidate is now trying to structure the whole problem into revenue and cost, and now figure out where exactly is the problem coming from, which is how a profitability interview is structured. Yes, the costs have increased, but the revenues have remained more or less constant. Why don't you start by analyzing the cost? The cost of the bank can broadly be segmented into fixed and variable. Fixed cost comprise of infrastructure cost and labor. Uh, since the PSB, uh, public sector bank, has permanent staff. Okay. On the on the infrastructure side, two major areas are real estate and IT infrastructure. The variable cost can also be segmented into operational cost and capital cost. Okay. Uh, is there any particular bucket you want me to analyze? Yes, let's explore the variable cost first. Sure. The capital cost can be calculated by looking into the reserve funds and investable funds. The cost associated with investable funds are a function of the rate and the leakage, where the rate is determined externally. On the operational dimension, the cost related to the customer acquisition cost related to customer acquisition cost and transaction cost. Okay, so this is how you have to be in a case study interview, that when you're told to explore one side, you cannot directly ask in the variable cost where exactly is the problem coming from. You have to give your explanation of how you'll analyze different buckets of that variable cost, and then ask which bucket should I be analyzing. Good, that's a fair analysis of cost. The bank has found that it has a higher than average leakage and transaction costs. What measures can you suggest? The transaction either happens through physical brick or mortar structure or digital channels. As I understand, the costs are substantially lesser in digital transaction compared to those through brick and mortar structures. Yes, the cost for an on-site transaction is rupees 50, which gets reduced to an average of rupees 12 for digital transactions. In that case, the bank should push for digital transactions. Uh, in the short term, moving to digital transactions would incur high cost. Training the rural customer, setting up camps. However, the customer would also start associating brand loyalty with the bank, which onboarded them. In the long term, the bank would have to invest its digital network to support a large customer base. However, it's the transaction cost. Uh, it's the transaction cost would decrease, and also free the employees to be reassigned to more productive assignments. Uh, if the transaction cost. For promoting a digital drive, we could tie up with NGOs. It would also be an initiative with the CSR. The NGO is in conjunction with schools and help from the local panchayats could help reach out. What? I think the candidate is just blabbering solutions which is not related to the problem. He has given some valid solutions, but he has also started speaking about uh, to promote we should tie up with NGOs. I think it's just overfitting two solutions together to make it work. But this is not, if you have solutions for the particular problem, say it. but don't keep adding different solutions to the mix so that it just looks like you don't know what you're talking about. Good. Could you please examine the leakages? The leakages could be examined by the point of view of increasing recovery and correcting future occurrence. Um, the leakage due to NPA could be due to externalities such as downturn in the economy. However, since other bank have been doing well during the period, it cannot be the economy-wide phenomena. Thus, the problem could either be due to the downturn in the public particular sector in which the bank is uh, employed for internal or the particular sector for which the bank is employed or internal parameters. In the internal parameters, the cost could either stem from policies or from shoddy implementation. The policies of the bank could be the cause, say by not capping the industry exposure or not setting proper dispersal guidelines. Similarly, in implementation, the cause could be improper follow-up procedures or customer verification. All right, anything in particular that the bank can do to increase recovery? Do we have a breakup of the NPA? A large percentage of NPA is contributed to by the large conglomerates by but measured by the number of NP accounts, it is high in the agriculture sector. Okay. For recovery by corporates, the bank could look at restructuring or file a case under bankruptcy code uh, if the bank feels that restructuring would not help. Okay. All right. For corporate loan recovery, the bank has already taken appropriate steps. I assume that the agriculture avenues are mostly cynical. In this case, the recovery should be done in campaign mode in the month of harvest, as most of the farm's income is concentrated in few months. This could be tailored as per the regions. For instance, in Uttarakhand, where most of the produce is sugarcane, the bank needs to directly tie up with sugar mills to have all the proceeds routed through the account. I mean, it just feels like the candidate is trying to show that he knows an information about what is the harvest of Uttarakhand and then try to fit a solution to it. But okay, he can get away with it, but it's not a bank's bank understanding the bank problem and solving it. It's just presenting a line of solution which you can look into. Uh, would the bank have enough resources for these activities? The bank would need to create special recovery officers to target these NPA, reallocating the staff to specialized roles such as these could improve productivity. Another important area that can be addressed in agriculture is crop insurance. This should be made mandatory with the bank bearing a part of the cost. Insurance would protect the interest of the farmers and also be a channel of cross selling for the latter. That's great. Anything else? Since the cause of the decline in profits was an increase in cost, the bank would also look towards the utilization of banking correspondence to provide a last mile connectivity, thus reducing fixed cost by obviating the need to set up brick and mortar structures. That's a good idea. Since you mentioned that digital capability should be developed for reducing the cost, how would you do it? Uh, Bank may look into acquiring an existing digital payment bank to develop digital capabilities quickly. This would also be beneficial to the bank as the existing team and target would have experience and knowledge in the segment, which would create synergies. Thanks. That would be all. Yeah, I would consider this would be a good interview. There were a lot of information given, and it was not very structured interview. But yeah, I think the candidate was able to at least find out the problem. Solutions or something he suggested more than required, and sometimes some of them are really not relevant to the bank's problem. Uh, but yeah, that was this was not that great of an interview. But let's see how the analysis of the interview. Yeah, so it's very important to maintain a very clear and crisp notes. So because sometimes at the end of the interview, the interviewer might ask for your notes. So it's very important that he understands everything by just one look of. So interview notes, banking sector specific costs such as customer acquisition and transaction costs along with NPA should be focused on. Uh, Decline is because of higher customer acquisition as bank still follows traditional banking model. Okay. Costs are high also. Costs are high also on account of larger NPAs. The NPAs recovery to be done on a sectorial basis. Focus on tie-ups with different agencies wherever possible to reduce cost. Okay. Case facts. Client is a national pan-India bank. Client stores majority business from rural base. Problem limited to bank itself, not a sector. Uh, Bank wants to reverse the trend in next 1 and 2 years. Declining profitability is due to increasing cost. Let's see how it is structured. So profits are revenue and cost. We are told not to focus on revenue, just on cost. Costs were fixed and variable. Fixed had infrastructure and salaries. Variable, and we are told to focus on variable, which had provisioning of non-performing assets, customer acquisition, and transaction cost. Transaction cost is something we have to look into, which is done mainly through brick and mortar store or digitally, and we needed to promote more digitally because it saves us money and also employee resources. Provision of MPA, it was not dependent on externalities such as downturn of economy. It was dependent on internal factors, which is bank policies and implementation gap. So we had to look into it. Okay. So yeah, and let's see the recommendations. Use digital technology to acquire customers and handle transaction as the cost is less than traditional methods. Consider acquiring existing payments bank to build digital capabilities. To create special recovery officers position that rec- targets recovery agriculture loans to ensure minimum NPAs. Make insurance mandatory for agriculture loans to reduce risk. For corporate NPAs, go to restructuring or the IBC route. Observations and suggestions. It is important to use nuances of banking industry to analyze sector-specific costs such as NPAs. Uh, Need to understand factors which are widening, within the control and outside of the control of the bank. For example, costs such as interest rates are decided on external factors, such as the decision by RBI, and therefore are not within the control of the bank. Structure the recommendations as per the specific problem and do not give a do not give a laundry list of suggestions. Exactly, the suggestions were too much and not needed, and that was something that a candidate could have done better. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this interview. I'll be uploading one interview case every day. So it's a good habit for you to watch one case study interview every day if you want to get into consulting, if you're looking or if you're having a case study interview coming up, it gets you in the mindset. So please do subscribe to the channel and I hope to see you guys next time. Thank you. Have a nice day.